Hello traders, welcome to TradePro Academy. And in today's video, what we're going to be breaking down are actual trades that we took in our live room also throughout the day, and a breakdown as to how we found a very long move based on one simple volume profile strategy. So profiting about $3,800 using just one simple strategy that we use on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to break that exactly down for you. So we're going to be going over the plan, the setup, and why we were looking at something specific based on the volume profile that was noticed multiple days before the event happened. So that's the beauty of being able to read volume profiles and understanding the auction that they represent to give you a whole understanding of how this market moves. So without further ado, let's dive right into this video right after this intro, and we'll break this down fully. So as you guys can see here on the screen, based on Sierra charts, right, these are the statistics pages where you can see about $3,800 in profit. This is before commission. After commission, probably still around 3,800. And 4 trades were taken total. Obviously, there were some drawdowns. This was one of the very few days that there weren't any red trades throughout the day, right? Those aren't. It's a rare occurrence realistically to not have a single loser. But all in all, what I'm looking at throughout this is how we did this, how we broke down this trading strategy. We'll look at the trades as well, and specifically how to use the volume profile to get a better understanding of how market directions work. So you guys may have seen this multiple times before, especially from us when we talk about distribution theory and the breakdown of distribution theory to give us an understanding of volume profile directionality. But first, before we dive right into that, what I want to do is set up the trade plan and guide through the trade plan to understand this strategy fully, and then we'll look at the trades as well. So why don't we dive right into that? So the beauty of distribution theory and understanding distribution theory fully is that you can get a very, very good reasoning behind the direction of the overall market. So this is a plan that was set up on Sunday, right? So when we understand distribution theory, one of the main things that we're going to be looking at here, I have a monthly and a weekly volume profile side by side. These are going to give us a lot of information, right? This is the monthly, this is the weekly. So one of the first things that I want to understand is where we stand in terms of these larger distributions that are represented by a 50-day profile. So what happens in this scenario is that, okay, the prior week, we can say, that started off the new month, we had a pretty drastic drop that completed, right, a decent downside move, and we broke under this distribution and this distribution. You can see they're kind of like these bells here. So what happens is that price moves back below this larger distribution and into kind of a pocket where new volume starts. So the reasoning behind that, right, is why would I look for the longs if we've gotten this drastic drop? Well, there's a few things to understand here. Number one, right, when we get a move either to the upside or downside, we want to see on how thick of a volume move that is, right, and where that volume stops. So in the prior month, you can see I've circled this, or I squared this green box over here to represent a very thin area of volume based in red. You can see there's a very similar area right over here. These very thin areas, once they get filled, right, that is considered a complete auction. So right where that area stops and volume actually starts to accumulate, you can see here on the 50-day it accumulates as well, right? You can look at this as confluence. And that's an area where I'd expect prices to actually stall out so we can get a turn back to the upside. So when that occurs, right, we'd be looking for a flip in direction. Now, we can add a layer to this. So we can add a layer to this strategy to make it a little higher probability and help us understand it a bit better. So the very basis, right, the very basic common aspects of distribution theory, if you use this blank space over here to draw, right, maybe we can actually, oops, we'll use this blank space to draw over here. So distribution theory, right, it tells us, okay, there's two big areas of distribution, right? Let's just say this is the case. When prices enter into a thick volume area from below where volume's very thin, what happens here from an understanding of market psychology and market participant psychology is that there's a lot of buy pressure that allows price to enter into an area that has such thick volume. It's not necessarily easy for that to happen. Now, should that occur, there's an extremely high probability that we go test the other side of that thick volume. So if prices escape this thick volume to the downside, prices become imbalanced, and there's a high degree of expectation that we move to the downside from that imbalance to allow prices to open up some of that downside momentum movement. So in this case, if we backtrack and look at what the information that we've been given here into this session is that we are very, very close to entering that large distribution of thick volume yet again. So the principle behind that is that, okay, if we actually enter back into it, that means that I could play this to the upside that would target some of the ledges and eventually the top band extreme of that area, which happens to be around 4,800. So what that tells us is that if we start moving back above 4,840, there's a pretty high probability we have a 60-point move in our favor to pretty much accept into this distribution. So if we look at the weekly profile here, right, this is the weekly. It's a similar script realistically. What happens is we clean up the auction that has very limited volume. When we get into an area of thick volume, prices are expected to rebound. Now, when prices start accepting back into a distribution start, right, which happened to be the 40, that is when you can look at this from a higher degree of confidence that the bull side is going to realistically take over. So we can look at this from any other way as well, right? If we take a look at how distribution theory played out in these prior sessions, right? Because if we move under that 4,800, right, 4,805, which is this line right here, you get the acceptance of this distribution. You have another 60-point move to the downside. You escape, right, that 3740-ish area. You escape 4840. You have a move down to complete the auction about 40 points lower, right? That's the simplest form of this strategy. So again, if we take any blank sheet, right, and we look at how this thing shaped up, you can get a better understanding of how this distribution theory works in essence. So let's take a look at one other chart here. We can take a look at this chart because it reflects the distributions a lot better and gives us a better understanding of what's going on. So if we look at this over the last few days, this is a session by session profile, right? We have a profile here, we've got a profile here, right? So we have two main distributions. So if we split this into large distributions and we go day by day and see how this thing shapes up, we get a better understanding of what's happening here. So we can say, generally speaking, that's like one large distribution. Another large distribution can start somewhere from like here to here maybe, right? And then we can either tie both of these together or we can split these individually, right? Why don't we just tie these together for the sake of argument here? So what happens in this area is that we have constant downside movement and we continuously close and open in distributions lower and lower and lower. So this part, right, we close below this larger distribution. That suggests that, you know what, we're probably going to see some kind of downside momentum movement, which we do on the overnight session back into that key area to complete the auction that I showed you in prior charts. So when that happens, right, we get a very nice move back from the overnight. We open into these areas, and what happens is we start to look for some of that acceptance higher. Well, this day, right, they try it, they don't accept because they close back below. We have the open on the next day from the overnight, they try it, and once we start moving back into that area, just like we did on the prior day, you have the acceptance into multiple distributions. Very similar to what had happened here. We come into the tops, into the end of the session, the overnight pulls back aggressively. We come back towards the bottom end of the distribution on today's trading session, which is why we were looking for the longs, right? And back we go. So I'm going to focus on what had happened here, and we can look at some of the trades that happened on this day. But all in all, this simple volume profile strategy gives you a very good understanding of what the direction is. And if you want to get a little more, I would say, precise, right, you can start looking at order flow and whatnot. So if we take a look at what we had going on here, right? On this prior trading session, what we were looking for is I was trying to bid into that 41 area, right? Why? Because remember, the 40 is the acceptance of the distribution. I wanted to bid into that. I managed to get, right, 50, or sorry, I managed to get a fill at the 50s a little later on, right? So what does this look like for us? So this is where we open, right? These are the trades. This is the prior day. This is the Friday, so we'll leave that out. But this is the Monday, and you can see, okay, this is the ledge or the start. The blue area or these blue areas that I've drawn are massive key distribution areas, right? We opened somewhere here, we've accepted already, and we've started to make the move higher. So I want to get long. I want to get long and I want to be long above these key areas. So what happens in this area, right? I missed this trade. I managed to pick some of these guys up, close um, them for about like 12 points or whatever that move was. And then I look at this, try some shorts here. They don't go very far. And then once that short got broken down, I got to remember, I'm in that larger distribution. So once we start moving back above that larger distribution, you have to be long, right? You have to be long to target the top band of that distribution, which happens to be around that 4,800 or so. So we got that move, right? And the acceptance of these areas allows us to understand how these distributions and how directionality should play out. Some of the shorts, right? These are little faders against the overall trend at some of the key areas. But if we understand that we're accepting into a major large distribution, we should stick to the long side and keep on that long side to get a piece of that movement higher and higher, right? We get to the top of the area, I only managed to fill one lot, right? A few ticks under the all-time or under that main high where that top of the distribution is for some of this downside move. And then on today's session, right, managed to pick up just a little piece to see if we can get that long side move going, right, based again on distribution theory. But the main premise is if we compare, right, the distributions versus the trades here, this is the start of the distribution around that low 40. So what happens is when prices open above those areas, that's an acceptance of the distribution where you'd want to stick long to target areas that are into this mid 60, right, which is over 20 handles away, and then into this low 90 and potentially that 4,800, right? This is the potential of a 60-point move on this just from the acceptance of a distribution. So when we understand where those are and we get opening prints or closing prints through those areas, we have a very good basic understanding of how this market should shape up for this trend. A very similar thing happened today. We come into the bottom end of the distribution, we get a trend day all the way back to the upside. So we open here, right? I couldn't necessarily get filled here. I waited for this like slight little leap through this area for the fill to continue this move, right? I did try some shorts here. I got taken out on some of them around like break even, and then some of them for a little profit. But ultimately, right, we have to understand, okay, now we're above this part of the distribution over here. What that tells us is that if we bid above that, you have to get long, right? You should be getting long to target the top band of the area, which is what I was looking for, which is what I did. And we got long to target all the way into that mid 90 from that mid 60, which, right, makes up for the majority of the day. Now, could I have just held that from that 50 that I bought all day? Yeah, maybe I could have, but maybe micromanaging some of these positions didn't do me so hot in that regard. But all in all, right, this very simple strategy and understanding these distributions and how this distribution theory works is what helps you really break down direction in the market and stray from the confusion of, oh, are we going down or up? Are we going down or up? You get a very good understanding on a day-to-day basis of where the market wants to go if you understand how these market participants have acted and are going to act based on the volume that's presented. Now, it goes a little deeper. You can look at some of these individual parts, but looking at this, right, what I was saying here on yesterday's session, failed offer under 60 constant bid. This market has more in it, right? I didn't stay fully long, but picked some up. I want to see around 80, even higher, right? This was from when we were trading into that mid 60. So there was a plan for another 20 points to the upside and more based on just continuous acceptance of distribution. So understand this strategy gives you a lot of information. It's the same thing as today, right? Today, what we were looking for longs into that 68, 69. Why? Why were we looking for longs into 68, 69? Because what happens is we fail on the overnight. We come back into the bottom band of that distribution, right? Somewhere into this area. And you can see some buyers stepped in, and I'm looking for the bottom band of this distribution to hold out. Because when we are within a distribution, each extreme is expected to hold a support resistance. So if you can use this very simple strategy to understand how, right, this market shapes up, you have a better understanding of where to actually trade and how to keep on side of the market without trying to fade constantly or get confused about direction, right? So when you look at this, even for example, here, if we close somewhere up here, we start entering higher distributions, I'm going to be more bullish, regardless of this day rallying another 40 points, right? That doesn't mean that it's rallied so much it can't keep going up. What it means is that you're continuously accepting into areas of thicker and thicker volume, right? That suggests that there's really strong buying that's going to press this price even higher. So keep that in mind. Now, there's a lot of information on our YouTube channel about distribution theory, so you can go and check those out. But we also have a free course down below in the description that you can check out and break down to get a better understanding of distribution theory. And check out our live trading room and our Discord at tradeproacademy.com for futures trading. This was what I wanted to talk about in terms of distribution theory and a very, very simple strategy that you can implement almost right away. It takes a bit of practice to understand where these distributions are, but when you understand that and when you understand where these ledges are, where distributions fall off, then you get a very good understanding of the directionality of the markets, understanding balance from imbalance, and so forth. So if you want to see more videos like this, please drop a comment down below. Hope you guys enjoyed our first video of 2024, and we'll be adding more to that. Thank you and take care, everyone.